has expired. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. Look, understandably, some of us have been celebrating a new job post the election, a new job as a parliamentarian. But tonight I do want to focus on thousands of Australians who are facing an uncertain future for their jobs. Right now there is a rolling crisis affecting the nation's metals manufacturing industries, with at least 10 smelters and refineries facing an uncertain future, many with their hand out seeking government support as they are crushed under the two pincers of ever-rising energy costs in this country and the aggressive industrial tactics of the Chinese Communist Party. We have already, as a nation, we should not forget, it's gone too unremarked, but as a nation we have effectively lost our nickel industry in the past year to these issues, these same issues. There have been 10,000 jobs lost in the Australian nickel industry last year. Only a few nickel mines are left, and we no longer can smelt or refine nickel here in this country. Nickel is instructive and should be a lesson for the government and for our nation about how we've got things so wrong when it comes to manufacturing, despite the promises that have been made to us. We were promised that this green energy future would be a boon for Australia's nickel industry, because nickel is one of the key components of many electric cars, of electric vehicle batteries. It's been the most common battery, has been a nickel, cobalt, lithium battery. And so the idea was, well, when the climate-conscious consumers of Europe and North America go to buy their Tesla or their electric vehicle, they'll demand to have a battery that is made with nickel, with green nickel, made from green energy. And so that's what we and BHP went to try to do, and it's been a complete and utter failure. Surprise, surprise, no one was paying a premium for green nickel. There is no premium for green nickel. And while we wallowed in our gullible naivety, China came along and financed the construction of something like 20 coal-fired power stations in Indonesia just in the last few years. And they've massively expanded their nickel production and cut us out of the market, and 10,000 jobs have been gone. As I say, it's gone largely unremarked. It's like we just move on and keep talking about this green energy stuff, and we're going to have a future made in Australia, is what the government says. But under their watch, 10,000 jobs were lost in the industry. There was no future for those in the nickel industry. Now there's an even broader and wider crisis emerging in my part of the world. We are on the cusp potentially of losing the copper industry from North Queensland. Keep in mind that almost every bit of copper made in the world is made using techniques that were developed and invented in Mount Isa and Townsville. Mount Isa Mines, now owned by Glencore, they developed the technology that underpins the modern manufacturing of copper. We should be very proud of that, but it would be an absolute national shame and embarrassment if under this government, so-called Labor government's watch, that industry was to depart our shores. That is a real prospect right now, because, as I say, they can't afford to pay these enormous price of power. 3 digits per megawatt-hour price of power is unsustainable for a competitive metals manufacturing industry. The making of metals, while complex, is basically the application of enormous amounts of energy to valuable rocks to make them even more valuable. And with our energy prices, that just can't happen. Clearly, the Chinese government has an explicit strategy to bankrupt many of these facilities in Western nations, and that strategy is to then monopolise that market and control it for themselves. They've done this in rare earths, they've done this in steel, they've done this in lithium, and the Labor Party's own Resources Minister, Madeleine King, warned a couple of weeks ago that China is looking to do that in copper and lithium now. So why isn't the government listening to their own Resource Minister's warnings? We all saw the Prime Minister travel to China for 6 days last week. This issue did not nary a mention. The Prime Minister did not seem to mention at all that the tactics of the Chinese government had cost 10,000 Australian jobs, and now we're on the cusp of losing tens of thousands of more jobs unless something is done. This is happening on the government's watch. They promised a future made in Australia. They promised Australians lower power prices. They promised Australian businesses that they'd have lower power prices and have more jobs in manufacturing. Nothing has happened. All we've got is words. Rhetoric is not going to pay the bills. Fancy speeches in this House are not going to keep manufacturing jobs in this country. and we need to fight for them and come back to a planet called reality and start looking after Australia first.
Thank you, Senator Canavan.